All right, welcome to this training section that we're going to be walking you through how to actually create your PARQ form. And it is going to be made up of two different parts that we are going to be talking about inside of this training section. So we are going to talk about how to import the PARQ form. Again, we've already gone ahead and done 80 to 90% of the work for you. So it's going to be very much easy for you to go ahead and import this into your ClientKit account. So you do not have to build it out from scratch. And then we will go ahead and talk about how to edit it as well. Okay, so in order to go ahead and actually import the PARQ form, we do have these step-by-step instructions inside of the guide. And of course, I am going to go ahead and walk you through them as well. So we are going to go ahead and open up your ClientKit account. From there, we are going to go ahead and go over to sites over on the left side. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is we are going to go ahead and click from there on forms. Okay. And from there, we're going to click on forms builder. So again, you're going to see at the top, you have forms, and then you saw that drop down that was forms builder right over there. Now it depends on, you might have some forms in here, you might not. Definitely if you've gone ahead and gone through setting up your website, you will have the main website contact form. You might not have these. That's perfectly fine. This is just a demo account that we go ahead and use to be able to go ahead and show some of the stuff. So obviously it's okay if you don't have those other forms on there. Now you will also notice that the PARQ form is different than the liability waiver, as well as it is different than the new client agreement. And the reason for that is because, as we explained inside the guide, is that the PARQ form is not a legally binding agreement, right? It's just really there for general information collection purposes only, right? So it's just a general collection form. And so for that reason, we are able to go ahead and use the forms, and sometimes we can even use the surveys column on here. And so yeah, we will get a signature from the actual client, but it's not like it has to be a legally binding signature, right? So that's the reason why, if you remember when we were setting up the new client agreement, or we were setting up the liability waiver, or some of these other legally binding agreements, that's the reason why we had to use contracts, proposals, agreements. All that stuff was a different section underneath payments that we went ahead and walked you through over there. Okay, so how do you actually go ahead and import the template that we have already gone ahead and created for you? So all you're going to go ahead and do is you are going to go ahead and click on add form over here on the right side, and then you're going to go ahead and click on choose from template. Okay, and so from there, what you're going to see is that we do in fact have right there the RWI members template. Okay, and of course there are many other form templates available for you in here, but again, right now we're primarily focusing on getting you rocking and rolling, and we don't want to get you lost in a bunch of, hey, tech tutorials on this form and this template and that. No. Right now we're keeping you focused, laser focused on the result, and that's the reason why we do have these templates here. Okay, so once you're there, you can go ahead and click on it, but if it doesn't click on immediately, you can click on the title and then click on the little eye icon on there, and then all you do is you click on continue from there, and then just like that, boom shakalaka, copy and paste, it is going to go ahead and pull up into your account. Now from here, you can just go ahead and click on save, and then if you'd like, what you can do is you can just go ahead and start editing it right over here, right? So that is part number one, which was going ahead and importing the PARQ form. You see how easy that is? Look at this. We've already gone ahead and created for you the questions, all of the custom fields, the custom values, the automations, the conditional logic, all of that is already created for you with the click of a button. How cool is that, right? Now, here's the thing. What we want to do now is talk to you about part two, which is actually editing the PARQ form. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about that, because it is going to be important for you to be at least familiar with this. So the very first thing that we would recommend that you do is you do come up over here, and instead of it being RWI template, we would recommend you go ahead and either leave it PARQ form. If you want to go ahead and change it to PARQ form with the name of your company. So in this case, let's say, for example, we're using Body Forge Fitness. You can go ahead and do that if you'd like to do that. Now, every time you make a change, remember, you do want to make sure that you do save. That's going to be very important. Okay. So in the guide, you see on here, we do recommend going ahead and changing the name. Okay. Now, the next part I want to walk you through here is going to be the thank you page. Okay. So let me walk you through how this PARQ form actually works. Okay. So we do have the intro on here. They are going to put their full name, the email address, and their phone number. Okay. And then we have a number of questions that we have seen based off of our own training, based off of things that we have seen in the industry, based off of things we've seen in the market, around what are the traditional questions that you're going to ask for the purposes of a PARQ in regards to asking the client, right? So they're going to respond yes or no to these questions. And then over here, they have the undersign, and then they got their signature here. Okay. So what happens here is that if they respond yes to these questions, right? So, hey, has your doctor ever said you have a heart condition? Yes. Do you feel pain in your chest? Yes. In the past month, when you were doing yes. So if they say yes to all these questions, that probably means that they are not fit to be able to actually do the physical activity that you're going to recommend for them to do. And so what happens here, and let me actually kind of show you this. Okay. So let's say, for example, they go through and they do yes. If they do a yes, right, on all of these, then what's going to happen, it's going to take them over to what is called a thank you page, okay? And the thank you page is going to have verbiage that is all about them saying yes. This is a conditional logic, kind of like a little bit of an automation there, right? Versus if they say no to this, then it's going to take them over to a different thank you page. It's going to have a different sign or a symbol on there for them. So how do we actually set this up, and how do you actually verify that this is in fact inside of the import that you've done, right? You want to check this so that way you're good to go. Well, let me show you what this looks like. So at the left side, right over here, you see this kind of like icon that looks like a puzzle piece, right? Let me see if I can zoom in for you guys and show you exactly what I am talking about right here, right? So I'm going to super zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. We're talking about this one right over here, okay? That's really big, really right there, okay? And so let me zoom back out just so that way it's not like super in our faces here, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to click on that. And what you're going to see is that inside of your form, you should have this conditional logic, right? So in here, if I click on this edit, don't click on a trash can, don't do that because we've already gone ahead and created this for you. You don't want to have to do the work. That's the whole point of being able to have a plug and play system. And so if I click on edit here, you'll see that if any of these questions comes out as a yes, right? So, hey, did your doctor said you can't work out? If they said yes to that, or if they said yes to this one, or if they said yes to this one. So if any of those questions they said yes to, then, right? So you're seeing the conditional logic here, right? If they said yes to this, or yes to this, or yes to this, or, right, all the way down here, then, okay, what you're going to do is you're going to show a custom message once they actually go ahead and submit the form. What is that custom message that is going to show up on there? This is the text that we have gone ahead and already created for you, right? So thank you for completing the PARQ form. You've answered yes to one or more of the questions, which means that you need a physician's clearance in order to start the exercise program. And then it goes ahead and walks you through that. And then of course you can go ahead and, if you need, to change that. But again, we've already gone ahead and put together an evergreen template system for you there. Now, that is if they actually select yes to any one of the questions, okay? So how do you get to the yes questions? You click on the conditional logic button over here, okay? And then from the conditional logic button, you then have, you have a bunch of other conditional logics that are, things that you can mess around with other forms. But for this form right here, you have this one conditional logic that is built inside of it, okay? That's for the yes. What about for the no? For the no, what we do is we click on right here, there's this kind of settings button, styles and options. And then we'll see that on submit, thank you for completing the PARQ form. You've answered no to all of the questions. This means, you'll see that all of that is in there already for you, okay? And then yes, you will see this error that conditional logic will take precedence over this message. That's because we've gone ahead and programmed it over here. So that way, if they hit yes to any of the questions, it'll override this, and it'll instead show the yes message that we went ahead and programmed earlier. Okay, so again, I'm walking you through this so that way you're empowered to understand. Even though this is already built out for you, we want you to understand exactly what has been built out for you. So that way, if you need to make changes to it, if something doesn't function the way that you want it to function, you understand exactly how to actually tweak it. Okay, so inside of the guide, what we would recommend you go ahead and do is we would recommend you actually go ahead and just review the messages that are there. So again, go ahead and review this. And then you can also go ahead and review what's inside of there. Now, you can also test the form, and we'll get to that in the second part, right? When we actually talk about how do you test and send it to yourself and all that stuff. But for right now, I just want to show you it is over here, and then I'll show you how you can test it in the upcoming training section as well, okay? So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the first part of this editing of the form, which is the thank you page and the conditional logic. The next part I want to talk to you about is changing the questions, okay? So again, we've already gone ahead and done the work for you here to go ahead and ask the major questions that are going to be important to ask the client. However, it is important for you to make sure that all of the information about how you would run a PARQ, or maybe how you've been trained to run a PARQ, or maybe based off of what is up to date later on in the future, right? Or maybe there's some other questions that are relevant to your specific training style. You might need to actually edit these questions, or you might need to add some of these questions. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through those two kind of scenarios individually. So let's first talk about how you would add a question, and then we'll talk about how you would edit a question, because they're two different things inside of the actual business platform. So let's say you were going to go ahead and actually add a question. So what it is that inside of the actual business platform, they don't call it questions. What they do is, because obviously this is a PARQ form, that's the reason why we're calling it a question. But sometimes for a form, you might not necessarily have a question. You might need some sort of information from them, right? And so instead, what they do is a question. Another word for question is just custom field. Okay, so just remember that custom field. And so all you would do is, let's say, for example, you had something that you wanted to go ahead and add. Okay, so you would click on the add form element right there, right? So there's that little plus button on the left side. And then once you have that, what you're going to do is you're going to click on custom fields, right? Remember, I told you, remember, it's not questions, it's custom fields. And then from there, it's going to show us all of the different questions that we have, which are custom fields, and I'll show you where you can start to edit these in the second part of this. But let's say, for example, there was another question that we wanted to add here, right? Let's say we want to add a number 8. And so I click add custom field, and it's going to ask me, okay, what type of custom field is this going to be? Is this like a single line text input, multi-line, text box, numbers, phone number, drop down, we have all these different options, okay? So in this case, I'm going to do a radio select. And just so you know, a radio select is when it ends up being like a circle, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a radio select. And so for the name, which is the actual field name over here, which is going to be the actual question, right? So I'm going to go ahead and let's put 8, right? Because I want to kind of make it numbered. You don't have to make it numbered. I'm just kind of putting it on here. And let's just make up a random question. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Let's just say, do you have diabetes? Okay, just a random question there. Now, object, you don't have to worry about this. This will just determine, hey, where do you want this information saved on the contact record? You can just make it on the contact. Group, this was if you had any folders for your custom values or custom fields. Again, that would go over there. You don't have to worry about that right now. And then the options, this is going to be where you would put either yes, and then I can click add an option, and then I can put no, right? So those would be the 2 radio buttons that would show up for the radio select. And then from there, of course, there are additional preferences. These are kind of advanced preferences, but I'm going to ignore those. We're going to go ahead and click on save. And then it does tell me I have to put it into a group. So I'm going to go ahead and put this underneath additional information because I don't want this to be, it's not really contact information. It's not really general information. Additional information should be fine there. And then I'm going to click on save. And then you'll see if I scroll up or down somewhere over here, there it is right there. So right here, I now have, do you have diabetes? And so I can actually go ahead and drag this, and you'll see just like that, I have now gone ahead and added a question to my PARQ form. How cool is that, right? And so that's the first part that I wanted to walk you through in terms of how do you actually add a custom field when you are inside of the actual form or survey editor. Okay, so that's what we went ahead and walked you through right now. Now, the second question would be, hey, but wait a second, maybe I didn't want to ask if you have diabetes. I wanted to ask, do you have high blood sugar? Well, here's a problem. You can't actually go ahead and change that from here, right? So it's kind of like, okay, well, I can maybe move these around on here. I can't really do anything on here, right? So how do I actually change the text for that? So in order to do that, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go to the settings of your account. Let me walk you through this. Again, don't get overwhelmed. Stick with me here. You're going to learn this. The first time you do this, you'll be like, oh man, that was a lot to remember. But then the more you do it, you're going to go ahead and become habitual with it. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to save this real quick, okay? And I don't want to lose this. So what I want to do is I want to open this up in another tab. How am I going to do that? I can go ahead and either right click on my mouse on the tab, and I can click duplicate, and that'll open up another tab there, okay? Or what I can do is I can hold the command or the control button on my keyboard, and I can actually go ahead and click on the backspace, on the actual back button of the browser. You see, so that'll open up another tab right there, right? So either way, we're going to go ahead and what we're going to do is we're going to get back over here. And so I could have done that over here as well. I could just click back on this other tab. So I'm preserving the actual form that I'm editing over here, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go over to settings. And then we're going to go over to custom fields. Now, don't get this confused because I confuse it all the time. There's custom values, which we're not talking about right now. And then there are custom fields, okay? So custom fields are the fields that a contact record or a person inside of your CRM can actually have filled for them, okay? And so here is going to be, if I scroll down, and let me actually zoom out just a little bit because we're zoomed in a little bit too much. Here is going to be all of those questions, right? So you see we have multiple pages of different questions on here. So there's a lot of different pages that you might have. But what we're focusing on right now is specifically, you see how we have these over here? These are the questions that are inside of our form. Now, I don't like to search it by clicking on the pages. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and search, over here with the search box, and I'm going to type in diabetes, right? And there we go. That's the question that I had on there. And from here, what I can go ahead and do is I can click on this button right there. I can click on bulk actions, and I can click on edit. And there we are. We're back in the actual editor of the actual question. And now what I can do is I can go ahead and change this. Do you have diabetes? I want this to actually say, do you have high blood sugar, right? And then I can go ahead and click on save. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over to my form, right? So remember, I just went over ahead and went back over to the other tab that we had saved before. I'm going to then go ahead and refresh this page. Now, of course, make sure you had saved, right? Because that's very important. If you refresh, you're going to lose your results there. Now, what you can notice if I scroll down here, my question 8 still says, do you have diabetes? And this is because the question actually has to get removed. Then I go back to the plus button. Then I go to custom fields. Then I scroll down. And there is my question now, right there. Do you have high blood sugar? That's the one that I edited in the other tab, right? So all I had to do was delete the old question that was there, deleted that, hit the plus button. I went over to custom fields, and then I have the new edited question that is right over there, right? So I don't have another option that says, do you have diabetes? It's only, do you have high blood sugar? And then all I got to do is I just drag this right over there. And now I have the updated version of that. And so you could do this for any of the questions that are on here, right? So let's say, for example, this one says, do you lose your balance because of dizziness? Let's say, hypothetically, you wanted to put, do you lose your balance because of laziness? I don't know. I'm just making something up here. Okay. So before I click out of here, I'm going to click save. And I'm going to go back to the actual tab because remember, I have this open already, right? So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm under settings. I'm under custom fields. I'm going to go ahead and put dizziness. Dizziness has 2 Z's in it. There we go. And then you'll see this is actually a duplicate. You don't have to worry about this one over here, but this is the one we're actually talking about, right? The number with the number 4. So again, you probably are not going to have duplicates, but this is the reason because this is a test account. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and bulk actions, go over here. And then we say, you know what? Do you lose balance because of laziness? Okay. So we go ahead and put laziness over here, laziness. Okay. Then we hit save. We go back over to our form. We hit refresh. Okay. And then remember that was, I believe, question number 4. Was, do you lose balance because of dizziness, right? Now, I could leave this one here for a second. I don't want to mess it up, but I'm going to go to custom fields, and I'm going to go over to 4, and I'm going to go ahead and just drag this, and it should show up somewhere. Okay, so wait a second. Maybe it didn't drag over here, right? So let's go ahead and drag this right over here. Now, it's not showing up, and the reason why it's not showing up is because I think it knows that we already have this 4 that's over here. It's kind of like seeing as a duplicate, right? So we're going to go ahead and actually X this one out. And I am going to go ahead and, are you sure you want to delete this? Yes. Okay. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and drag this right over here. And you'll see that it actually shows that do you want to because of laziness. Now, did you see that error box that showed up? The reason that error box showed up is because it warned us that there is conditional logic that has actually been edited now. And so now what we got to do is we actually might have to go over here and you'll see we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. So what we got to do is we now actually have to go in and add an additional layer of what it is that we're talking about. And so what we got to do here is we got to add another OR field, right? Because now we've jacked up our entire conditional logic. And so again, I know this is a little bit of a lengthier tutorial, but I want you to be equipped of understanding, okay, how do I edit each part of this, right? So again, you might not have to do this. I'm just walking you through this. If you have to do this, this is what it would look like. In terms of what you have to do, there's honestly not a lot because in terms of editing it, you just got to make sure that your conditional logic is good. And then if you want to go ahead and kind of, change the questions, you can do that. But this is the reason why I'm walking you through this. So, or, and then if question number 4 is equal to yes, or if question number 8 is equal to yes, right? So now I've gone ahead and programmed 2 additional, because we edited this one and we edited this one. I had to then add it into the conditional logic on there, okay? And then I can go ahead and hit save. And then we are good to go back to what we had before. I hope that makes sense. I hope I did not lose you. I know this was a little bit lengthier, but I just wanted to walk you through this a little bit more advanced, a little bit more technical, but I wanted you to be familiar with it. So I hope I went ahead and explained it in a way that was easy to understand. Okay, so we did now talk about the custom fields. I talked to you about how to actually add a custom field as well as how to edit custom fields inside of the settings of your actual account. The last thing I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about is changing the style. Okay, so if I go ahead and click backspace on this, you'll see that at the top right, there's this kind of settings button here, right? And so if I click on this settings button, there's a number of settings that you can actually go in and change here. Now, I wouldn't recommend messing things up if you don't know what you're doing, but I just want you to explore this. You can kind of just look at it. Don't click a bunch of stuff and then mess everything up and then have to restart. Of course, if you have the template there, you can always just delete this and start over. However, I just want you to be familiar with understanding, hey, I can mess with the layout. There's a form style, there's padding, there's field style, there's, all sorts of stuff, labels, short labels, placeholders, custom CSS, background images, header images, themes. They also have pre-built themes in here as well. Let me see if I can zoom in so you can see a little bit better. They got some themes in here, right? Which is awesome. They got then options, right? So this is where that form was, that option in terms of the thank you, the thank you page for the no, okay? Background colors, all bunch of sorts of stuff on here that is available, that is additional advanced settings that I just want you at least to be aware of, the styling, the themes, and the options that is available here. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that is really the run through and the walkthrough of how to edit the PARQ form. We went ahead and talked about editing the name, the thank you page, the yes and no, as well as changing the questions and then changing the style as well. Whatever you do, make sure that you keep on saving. That whenever that orange dot, that orange kind of circle comes up, it means that you have changes that have not been saved. So you want to make sure that if you make any changes, you do end up saving those changes because you don't want to lose them. But with that being said, now you are basically a pro when it comes to the actual form builder inside of ClientKit. This has been this specific training on creating the PARQ form. Up next, we're going to talk about how to actually program the email notifications for the PARQ form, how to send the PARQ form, how to test it on yourself, how to see the submissions, as well as how to make sure that the test is working for the yes and no pages. So we'll go ahead and talk about that in the next training section. So with that being said, without further ado, keep that momentum going. We will catch you in the next training section.